Don't. That's forbidden. The rancher looked anyway and did the unthinkable. The sun had just begun to rise over the vast expanse of Henry's ranch, casting a golden glow across the rolling hills. Every blade of grass seemed to shimmer in the early morning light, and the soft hum of nature filled the air. Birds chirped cheerfully as they flitted between the trees, and somewhere in the distance a brook gurgled gently, winding its way through the land. Bass. Henry stood at the edge of the farmhouse porch, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand, and surveyed the land he had tended for more than 30 years.
The ranch was more than property to him. It was a legacy, a living, breathing testament to years of hard work, careful planning, and dedication. Every fence post, every barn beam, and every worn path had a story to tell.
Henry was a man of routine, rising with the sun and sleeping soon after it set. His life was simple, yet it was full. Each day brought its own chores, checking on the livestock, repairing fences, tending to the garden, and keeping a watchful eye over the sprawling pastures. The work was hard, but it was honest, and Henry took pride in it. Yet beneath his calm exterior, there was a part of him that remained restless, a curiosity that had been growing quietly for years.
The ranch had many secrets, though not all of them were visible at first glance.
Among the wide-open fields and neat rows of crops lay a small, hidden area that Henry had never allowed anyone to enter. The locals had given it a name, whispered in cautious tones: the Forbidden Meadow. It was said to be strange, almost magical, and for reasons no one could fully explain, Henry had insisted that it remain untouched. He never spoke of it openly, and he never allowed anyone to approach it. Visitors, neighbors, and even his own family respected his rules because Henry's word was law on the ranch. And yet, despite all this, the Forbidden Meadow loomed in Henry's mind like a shadow, a place that teased the edge of his curiosity.
On this particular morning, Henry decided to make his usual rounds.
He mounted his old sturdy horse, whose name was Dusty, and rode out across the familiar fields. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of wildflowers and freshly turned soil. Henry greeted each of his animals as he passed. A cow lifted its head and mooed softly, and a group of chickens scattered, clucking as he approached. Henry smiled at their simple gestures, finding comfort in their predictable behavior. But as he approached the edge of the woods, he noticed something unusual. A faint trail of broken branches and disturbed grass led toward the Forbidden Meadow. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it was enough to make Henry pause. Someone, or something, had been there. Henry dismounted from Dusty and walked carefully toward the trail. He could feel the cool earth beneath his boots and hear the soft rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. The closer he got to the edge of the meadow, the more uneasy he felt. There was a strange energy here, a quiet tension that made the hairs on his arms stand up.
He reminded himself firmly, "Don't. That's forbidden." He had said it to himself countless times over the years, as a rule, a warning, and a promise.
And yet he could not shake the feeling that he needed to see what had disturbed the land. For a long moment Henry stood there, torn between caution and curiosity. He thought about the countless stories he had heard from neighbors about strange sights in the meadow, glowing lights at night, unusual sounds, and animals acting oddly near its borders. No one dared to go inside, and many claimed it was cursed or enchanted. Braith. Henry, however, was a practical man. He did not believe in curses or magic. He believed in facts, in what could be seen, touched, and understood. And yet, as he stared into the dense trees marking the meadow's edge, he could not deny that something unusual was happening.
He decided to step back and observe from a distance.
He climbed a small rise in the terrain, giving himself a better view of the meadow. From this vantage point, he could see the tall grass swaying gently, though no wind was strong enough to move it. He noticed small patches where the grass had been flattened, forming strange circular patterns. The sight sent a shiver down his spine, but Henry forced himself to focus on rational explanations. Perhaps it was animals. Perhaps it was the work of poachers or trespassers. Whatever it was, he knew he had to investigate further, but carefully.
He made a mental note to return later during the day when he could see clearly and take precautions.
Returning to the farmhouse, Henry poured himself another cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table staring out the window at the meadow. His mind was restless. He thought about the stories he had been told as a boy, growing up in the area, tales of strange occurrences, of lands touched by things humans could not understand, and of warnings never to cross certain lines. As a child, he had been both terrified and fascinated by these stories, and now, decades later, he felt that same mix of fear and curiosity. He knew he had responsibilities, his ranch, his animals, and his family, but he could not ignore the pull of the unknown. Throughout the morning, Henry went about his chores, but his thoughts kept returning to the forbidden meadow. He repaired a broken fence post near the barn, fed the animals, and collected eggs, but each task felt mechanical. His mind was elsewhere, imagining what lay beyond the trees, wondering what secrets the meadow held. The idea of venturing there filled him with a mix of excitement and dread. He had been taught to respect boundaries, to honor warnings, yet part of him yearned to see for himself what no one else could. By midday, Henry decided to seek advice, not from people, but from the land itself. He walked to the edge of the woods, letting his eyes and ears take in every detail. He noticed the faint sound of running water, perhaps from a hidden stream, and the occasional flutter of wings as birds moved through the trees. The meadow seemed alive in a way that the rest of the ranch was not, vibrant and almost expectant. It was as if it were waiting for him to take a step further, to cross the line that had never been crossed. Henry knew that his curiosity was dangerous. He remembered the warnings he had given himself over the years. He remembered the way the locals avoided the area, how even seasoned hunters and ranchers would skirt its edges without venturing inside. But the more he looked, the stronger the urge grew. He wanted to understand. He wanted to see the truth for himself. The idea of leaving it unexplored, of never knowing what lay beyond the boundary, became unbearable. That evening, as the sun began to sink low and paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Henry made a decision, not to enter yet, but to prepare. He gathered supplies, marking a path with small, discreet markers so he could retrace his steps if necessary. He brought a flashlight, a notebook to record observations, and a small first aid kit. Practical items that a cautious man would take if he planned to investigate something unknown. He did not tell anyone. It would be his secret, at least for now. As darkness fell, the ranch took on a quiet stillness. The animals settled into their pens, and the wind whispered through the trees. Henry stood once more at the edge of the meadow, looking at the dense shadows that hid its secrets. He could feel the pulse of the land, an energy that seemed to hum softly beneath the surface. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that curiosity was not a crime and that seeking knowledge was part of being human. Yet he also reminded himself, don't, that's forbidden. The warning echoed in his mind like a mantra, a tether to caution even as desire pushed him forward. Henry returned to the farmhouse, feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He ate a simple dinner, but his appetite was distracted. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, made him think of the meadow. He wondered what he would find and whether he was ready for the answers. Sleep did not come easily, and when it finally did, it was filled with dreams of glowing lights, strange shapes and whispers carried on the wind. Morning came again, brighter and more inviting than the previous day. Henry awoke with a sense of resolve. Today, he told himself, he would begin the careful observation he had planned. Not recklessly, but methodically. He would watch, note, and understand before making any daring moves. He saddled Dusty and rode toward the meadow, heart pounding with both excitement and fear. The familiar landscapes of his ranch blurred as he focused on the edge of the forbidden land. Every step, every hoofbeat, felt like crossing a threshold between the known and the unknown. Thus, as he approached the border, Henry could see more details. The grass in the meadow swirled in strange patterns. The trees seemed to lean slightly inward, as if shielding their secret, and the air itself felt different. Cooler, sharper, almost alive. He dismounted and stood quietly, listening. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine what could be hidden inside. It could be something natural, something extraordinary, or something he had never even dreamed of. The possibilities thrilled and terrified him. And so Henry stood there, on the edge of the forbidden meadow, caught between fear and curiosity. He knew he had not crossed the line yet, but the temptation was strong. The land seemed to call to him, whispering that knowledge awaited those brave enough to seek it. He could not turn away, not entirely. He took careful notes, observed patterns, and committed the details to memory. Little did he know that this moment, the simple act of standing at the threshold, would be the beginning of a journey that would test his courage, challenge his beliefs, and change his life forever. The sun climbed higher, spilling light across the meadow, and Henry allowed himself one last glance before retreating back toward the safety of familiar fields. His heart still raced, his mind still buzzed with questions, and the pull of the forbidden grew stronger with each passing hour. What was hidden inside the meadow? What secrets had he only glimpsed from afar? The answers lay beyond the boundary, waiting for the moment he would dare to step forward. Henry could not stop thinking about the forbidden meadow. The memory of the strange patterns in the grass, the way the trees seemed to lean inward, and the unusual feeling in the air stayed with him day and night. Every time he went about his daily chores, feeding the animals, mending fences, checking water troughs, his mind wandered back to that hidden place. It was as if the meadow had a quiet voice calling him, pulling him closer with every heartbeat. He knew he should wait, that patience was wise, but his curiosity had grown too strong to ignore. One late afternoon, when the sun hung low and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Henry made up his mind. He would go closer, not recklessly, but carefully. He prepared like a man setting out on an important mission. He packed a small backpack with essentials: a flashlight, a notebook, a water bottle, a pocket knife, and a camera. He wanted to record what he might see. He chose clothing that would allow him to move quietly through the tall grass and thick brush, and he tied his boots tightly, making sure he could walk without stumbling. Henry mounted Dusty, his loyal horse, and rode slowly toward the meadow. Every hoofbeat on the soft earth seemed louder than usual, echoing in the quiet evening air. The closer he got, the more intense his feelings became. Fear mingled with excitement, and a strange sense of anticipation made his chest tighten. He knew that crossing into this forbidden land might change everything, yet he felt an irresistible need to discover the truth. When he reached the edge of the meadow, Henry dismounted and took a deep breath. The air smelled different here, fresher, cooler, almost electric. He ran a hand along the tall grass, feeling it sway against his fingers. It was soft, yet dense, and it moved as if something unseen stirred beneath it. He glanced around, making sure he was alone, and stepped cautiously into the meadow. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself was aware of his intrusion. The meadow stretched before him, wider and more mysterious than he had imagined. Small wildflowers dotted the grass, their colors vivid in the fading light. Tiny insects buzzed quietly, and the occasional bird flitted above, calling softly. Henry noticed patterns in the grass that seemed almost deliberate, swirls, circles, and lines that he could not explain. His curiosity sharpened. Something had disturbed this place, and he was determined to find out what. As he walked deeper into the meadow, Henry became aware of movement among the trees. Shadows shifted, though he could see no one there. He paused, listening. There was a faint rustling sound, like leaves brushing against one another. But no wind was blowing. He stepped closer to investigate and saw something he did not expect. A small wild deer stood at the edge of the trees, staring at him with wide, unafraid eyes. It did not flee. It simply watched, and for a moment Henry felt as though the animal understood his thoughts. He slowly raised his camera, hoping to capture the moment, but the deer blinked and disappeared into the shadows as silently as it had appeared. Henry felt a shiver run down his spine. The meadow was alive in ways he could not explain. It was not dangerous in the usual sense, but it carried a strange energy, as if it held secrets meant to remain hidden. Yet the pull to explore further was stronger than ever. Henry continued walking, taking careful notes of everything he observed. He marked areas where the grass seemed flattened or disturbed, and he made sketches of the unusual patterns. He even tried to map the layout of the meadow, though it seemed almost impossible. The trees formed natural walls, creating small clearings that were difficult to navigate. Shadows shifted strangely, and the light changed unpredictably, giving the place an otherworldly feel. Henry felt both awe and unease, but he pressed on. After some time, he noticed something unexpected, small footprints in the soft earth. They were not human, at least not entirely, and they were unlike any animal tracks he had seen. They led toward a small grove at the center of the meadow. Henry felt his heart race. The footprints were fresh, and they suggested that something, or someone, had been here recently. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be another rancher? Or was this the result of some natural phenomenon he had never encountered? He followed the tracks carefully, moving slowly to avoid disturbing anything. The air seemed to grow cooler and the light dimmer, as if the grove itself was shielding itself from the outside world. Henry felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He was entering the heart of the forbidden meadow, the place no one had dared to explore. Every step made him more aware of the responsibility he carried. One wrong move and he could cause damage or endanger himself. But he could not turn back now. Finally, he reached the grove. It was smaller than he had imagined, enclosed by tall trees with thick trunks and twisted branches. The ground was covered in soft moss, and the air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with the earthy scent of damp soil. In the center, he saw something that made him pause. There was a small, clear pond reflecting the last light of the evening sky. The water shimmered in unusual colors, greens, blues, and purples, that seemed to shift as he moved. Henry knelt to touch it, feeling a chill as his fingers met the cool surface. The pond seemed to hum softly, though there was no sound other than the whisper of leaves. Henry could not explain what he was seeing. The colors were too vivid, too perfect, and the patterns in the water seemed almost deliberate. He felt as if the pond was alive, watching him as he watched it. For a moment, he questioned his own senses. Was this natural or something extraordinary? His rational mind struggled to find an explanation, but he could not. All he knew was that he was witnessing something rare, perhaps unique, and he was grateful to be there. As he explored further, Henry noticed small plants growing near the pond that he had never seen before. Their leaves were unusual shapes, and some had tiny flowers that glowed faintly in the dim light. He carefully sketched each one in his notebook, marveling at their beauty. He felt a sense of wonder he had not experienced since he was a child, exploring the woods with wide-eyed curiosity.
Yet even in this awe, a small voice in his mind reminded him, "Don't."
That's forbidden.
Henry spent hours in the grove, observing, sketching.
He felt a strange connection to the meadow, as if it had been waiting for someone to discover its secrets. He noticed how the plants seemed to respond to his presence, the way the water shifted, and how the light danced among the trees. It was mesmerizing. And yet, he knew he could not stay forever. Darkness was falling, and he needed to return before he became lost or exhausted. As he prepared to leave, Henry took one last look around the grove. He felt a mix of relief and longing. Relief that he had explored safely, and longing because he knew he would return. The Forbidden Meadow had revealed some of its secrets, but not all. Its mysteries were far from solved, and Henry felt that this was only the beginning of a journey he could not yet fully understand.
He retraced his steps carefully, following the small markers he had placed earlier.
The strange footprints were gone, and the deer he had seen earlier had disappeared as well. Yet he could still feel the energy of the meadow, a quiet hum that seemed to follow him as he walked. By the time he reached the edge of the trees, the last rays of sunlight had disappeared, and the ranch beyond looked familiar and safe. He mounted Dusty and rode back to the farmhouse, his mind buzzing with everything he had seen. That night, Henry could not sleep. He lay awake, thinking about the pond, the glowing plants, and the strange footprints. He wondered what he had witnessed, whether it was unique to this place or something others might discover in time. He knew he had crossed a boundary, stepping into a place that was forbidden. Yet he also knew that he could not ignore it. The meadow had drawn him in, and he was now part of its story, whether he liked it or not. Over the next few days, Henry went about his work with a renewed sense of purpose. The chores of the ranch were familiar, but his mind remained partially in the Forbidden Meadow. He observed the patterns in the sky, the behavior of his animals, and the sounds of the land, all with an eye toward understanding what he had discovered.
He became more attentive, more patient, and more aware of details he had once overlooked.
The meadow had changed him, awakening a curiosity and attentiveness he had not realized he possessed.
Henry also began to notice changes in the animals near the meadow.
Birds seemed to be more active in the area, and even the deer appeared to linger at the edge longer than before. He wondered if the energy of the meadow was affecting them in subtle ways. It was a mystery he could not yet solve, but he felt a deep respect for the land and its secrets. He knew he had to approach it carefully, with patience and caution. Despite the wonder and beauty he had experienced, a small part of Henry remained uneasy. He remembered the warning he had given himself. "Don't, that's forbidden." He knew that some boundaries existed for a reason, and he could not ignore that entirely. The meadow was extraordinary, yes, but it was also unpredictable. Every day he reminded himself to respect it, even as his curiosity urged him to explore further. Henry realized that the Forbidden Meadow had changed his life in ways he could not yet measure. It had awakened a sense of adventure, a need to understand, and a respect for things beyond his control. It had challenged him, frightened him, and fascinated him all at once. And while he did not yet know what the future held, he understood one thing clearly. This journey was only beginning, and the meadow's secrets were waiting for him to uncover them, step by careful step. Days passed since Henry first ventured into the Forbidden Meadow. Yet the memory of the glowing pond, the strange plants, and the unusual footprints haunted him constantly. He found it hard to focus on his daily chores. Each morning as he fed the animals and repaired fences, his eyes kept drifting toward the edge of the meadow, wondering what he might discover next. The pull of the unknown had grown stronger, and with it came a mixture of excitement and unease. Henry was careful to keep his trip secret. He did not tell anyone about the meadow, not even his closest friends. He knew that people might not understand, or worse, might try to exploit the land. He had spent decades protecting the ranch, and he could not risk losing control of this special, mysterious place. So he'd planned every step meticulously, deciding the best times to visit, which paths to take, and how to move quietly so as not to disturb anything. One morning, Henry rose before sunrise. The sky was painted in faint shades of pink and purple, and a thin mist hovered above the ground. He packed his essentials carefully: flashlight, notebook, water, snacks, and his camera. Break. Today he intended to explore further than he had before, venturing toward a part of the meadow that had remained hidden from view. Dusty, his horse, seemed aware of the excitement in the air and moved with a quiet energy as they approached the edge of the meadow. As Henry stepped off the path and into the tall grass, he felt a shiver run down his spine. The meadow seemed different this morning. The air was heavier, filled with the scent of damp earth and wild flowers. The sunlight filtered through the trees in strange angles, creating patterns on the ground that shifted as he walked. Spurs. Even the usual sounds of birds and insects seemed muted, replaced by a soft, almost imperceptible hum. Henry paused and listened carefully. There was a rhythm to the meadow now, a quiet heartbeat that matched his own. He moved cautiously toward the center of the meadow, where the pond had shimmered with unusual colors during his last visit. As he walked, he noticed more footprints in the soft earth. They were small, delicate, and unlike any animal tracks he had seen. They led toward a dense thicket of trees that formed a natural barrier. Henry's curiosity surged. He felt that he was on the verge of discovering something significant, something that no one else had ever seen. The closer he got to the thicket, the more he realized that the meadow was alive in ways he could not explain. The grass seemed to sway without wind, and the trees leaned slightly inward, as if shielding the area from view. Tiny flowers glowed faintly along the edges of the path, pulsing in soft colors. Henry could not tell if it was an optical illusion or something extraordinary. He made careful sketches in his notebook, noting the colors, shapes, and patterns. Each detail seemed more remarkable than the last. Suddenly, Henry heard a sound, a soft rustling, like footsteps on dry leaves. He froze. The sound came from deeper within the grove, and it was deliberate, not random. He waited, holding his breath, straining his ears. The rustling stopped, and for a moment, all was silent. Then he saw movement. A small figure darted between the trees. It was too quick to identify clearly, but it was unmistakably alive. Henry's heart raced. He had expected to find plants, water, and patterns in the grass, but not this. Someone, or something, was here too. Fear mingled with fascination. Henry debated whether to retreat or follow. His rational mind told him to leave immediately. The meadow was forbidden for a reason, and encountering another presence here could be dangerous. Yet his curiosity pushed him forward. He decided to approach slowly, moving as quietly as possible. Each step was deliberate, careful, and calculated. The figure remained just beyond his line of sight, always partially hidden by the trees. As he drew closer, Henry began to notice details he had not seen before. The thicket opened into a small clearing where sunlight streamed in from above. The figure stopped for a moment, and Henry could see that it was not a person. At least, not entirely. It moved gracefully, almost like an animal. Yet it seemed aware of him. Its eyes reflected the light, glowing faintly, and Henry felt a chill run through him. He realized that the meadow held secrets far deeper than he had imagined. Henry wanted to turn back, but a sense of responsibility kept him rooted. He had come this far and he could not ignore what he had seen. He took a few careful steps forward, keeping his eyes on the figure. Bay. It did not flee, but it did not approach either. There was a tension in the air, a silent understanding that neither should make sudden moves. Henry felt that the meadow itself was watching, testing him, challenging his presence. He lowered his camera, realizing that capturing this moment might not be appropriate. Some things were meant to be experienced, not recorded. Instead, he took mental notes, observing the patterns of movement, the way the light reflected off leaves, and the subtle vibrations in the air. Every detail seemed meaningful, as if the meadow and its inhabitants were communicating in a language he was only beginning to understand. Time seemed to stretch. Henry was aware of every sound, every shadow, and every movement around him. The small figure moved closer to the pond, and Henry could see it clearly now.
It was a creature he had never seen before. Its body was sleek, with fur that shimmered in soft colors, blending with the environment.
Its eyes were large and intelligent, filled with curiosity and caution. Henry felt a strange connection to the creature, a sense that it recognized his intentions and judged them carefully. But for a moment, neither Henry nor the creature moved. They studied each other, separated by only a few meters. Henry felt awe and respect. He realized that he had stumbled upon something unique, something that had likely existed undisturbed for years.
The meadow was not just a place of strange plants and patterns. It was a sanctuary, a hidden world that had thrived without interference.
Henry's curiosity began to shift from excitement to concern. He wondered if his presence could harm this place. The meadow had survived for years precisely because it was forbidden. Every plant, every creature, and every pattern depended on the balance of its environment. By entering, he had disrupted that balance, even if only slightly. He made a mental promise to himself. He would tread lightly, observe carefully, and do nothing to harm what he had discovered. As he watched, the creature moved closer to the water and lowered its head to drink. Henry noticed that the pond glowed softly under its reflection, colors rippling like liquid light. He could see the patterns in the water shifting as if responding to the creature's presence. It was mesmerizing, and Henry felt both fear and reverence. He understood that he was witnessing a phenomenon far beyond ordinary experience, a secret hidden in plain sight, yet protected by the boundaries he had been warned never to cross. Henry realized that he had crossed an invisible line, not just physically but morally. His curiosity had led him into a world that was delicate, mysterious, and alive in ways he had never imagined. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders. He could not exploit this discovery, and he could not reveal it recklessly. He had to protect it, just as the meadow had protected itself for years. After what felt like hours, the creature finally looked directly at Henry and then slowly disappeared into the trees. The soft hum of the meadow returned, and the patterns in the grass and pond settled back into their natural rhythm. Henry felt a mix of relief, awe, and a lingering fear. He had witnessed something extraordinary, yet he understood the consequences of his actions. The forbidden meadow had revealed a part of its secret, but it had also reminded him of the thin line between wonder and danger. Henry spent the next hour carefully documenting what he had seen. He made sketches of the creature, the pond, and the glowing plants, noting every detail he could remember. He recorded his thoughts in his notebook, reflecting on the responsibility he now carried. The meadow was more than a curiosity. It was a living, breathing ecosystem with mysteries that demanded respect. He knew that any further intrusion would require caution, preparation, and a deep understanding of the delicate balance that sustained it. As he retraced his steps toward the edge of the meadow, Henry felt a profound sense of change. The world he had known, the familiar ranch, the routine chores, and the everyday life, suddenly felt smaller, less important. He had glimpsed something timeless, a secret hidden in plain sight, and it had transformed his perspective. He understood that life was larger and stranger than he had ever imagined, and that the Forbidden Meadow was a reminder of the limits of human knowledge. Returning home that evening, Henry found it difficult to eat or sleep. His mind was filled with images of the glowing pond, the strange creature, and the shimmering plants. He reflected on the warnings he had given himself.
Don't! That's forbidden. Now he understood why.
Some things were meant to remain untouched, carefully preserved by time and nature. Yet he also knew that his curiosity had brought him here, and that he had been given a rare opportunity to witness something extraordinary. Over the next few days, Henry became more cautious in his visits. He observed from a distance, taking care not to disturb the creatures or plants. He experimented with different ways of moving quietly, noting the patterns of light, sound, and growth in the meadow. Every detail mattered. He realized that the meadow was more than a place. It was a lesson in patience, observation, and respect. By entering it carefully, he could learn its secrets without causing harm. Henry also noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt more attentive, more aware of the natural world, and more patient with both animals and people. His encounters in the meadow had taught him that curiosity was a powerful tool, but it came with responsibility. He could not rush, he could not assume, and he could not take more than he needed. The meadow had shown him the importance of balance, respect, and restraint. Yet, even with this understanding, a part of Henry could not ignore the pull of the unknown. He knew that there were more secrets in the meadow, more mysteries waiting to be discovered. The footprints, the glowing plants, and the shimmering pond were only the beginning. The Forbidden Meadow had more to teach, and Henry felt a mixture of excitement and fear as he considered what might come next. He understood that every step forward required caution, observation, and a deep respect for the hidden world he had entered. By the end of the week, Henry had established a routine. Each day he would visit the meadow briefly, observe carefully, take notes, and retreat before causing any disturbance. Breaths. The animals, plants, and even the mysterious creature seemed to recognize him as a careful, respectful presence. The meadow responded in kind, revealing small secrets, subtle patterns, and fleeting glimpses of beauty that rewarded patience and restraint. Henry felt honored to witness this, and he knew that he would protect it at all costs.
Henry also began to understand that the Forbidden Meadow was a mirror.
It reflected not only the beauty and mystery of the natural world, but also his own curiosity, patience, and moral responsibility. Each visit reminded him that exploration came with consequences, and that true discovery required more than courage. It required respect, care, and a willingness to learn from the world rather than dominate it. And so, Henry continued his careful exploration, each visit adding new layers of understanding, awe, and humility.
He had crossed the threshold into the unknown, witnessed its wonders, and learned the delicate balance between curiosity and caution.
The Forbidden Meadow had revealed itself to him in part, and Henry knew that the journey was far from over. Each day offered new lessons, new mysteries, and new challenges, but he was ready to face them with the patience, respect, and care that the meadow demanded. Henry could feel the weight of the Forbidden Meadow more than ever as he approached it that morning. The sun was just rising, and a soft mist hovered above the grass, giving the land a dreamlike quality. Each step he took toward the meadow was careful, deliberate, and filled with a mixture of excitement and tension. He had grown used to the rhythms and patterns of this hidden world, yet he knew he had not seen everything. The meadow still held secrets, and he was determined to discover them without causing harm. He dismounted Dusty at the edge of the meadow and let the horse graze while he stepped into the tall grass. The air here was always different, cooler, cleaner, and almost alive. Today it seemed to hum a little louder, as if aware of his presence and the purpose of his visit. Henry had learned patience over the past weeks, understanding that rushing or forcing his way into the meadow would be dangerous. He moved slowly, observing the patterns in the grass, the way the light fell through the trees, and the subtle shifts in the plants. Everything seemed alive in a delicate balance. As he approached the center of the meadow, Henry noticed something unusual. The small pond that had shimmered with strange colors on his first visit now seemed even more vibrant. Tiny waves rippled across its surface, and the colors shifted more rapidly than before, greens melting into blues, blues into purples, and purples into golds. The soft glow seemed to invite him closer, yet at the same time it radiated a quiet warning. Henry hesitated, reminding himself to be careful. He had learned that this place was not just beautiful, it was fragile, and his actions mattered. Henry knelt by the pond and observed the water carefully. As he did, he noticed ripples forming even though there was no wind. Something beneath the surface moved slowly, creating patterns that looked intentional. He realized that this was not just a pond. It was part of the meadow's hidden world, a living reflection of its mysteries. He reached for his notebook to record the colors and movements, trying to capture the strange beauty without disturbing it. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. The small creature he had seen weeks before stepped out from behind the trees. Bess. Its fur shimmered softly in the morning light, and its eyes, bright and intelligent, were fixed on him. It moved gracefully toward the pond, and for a moment, Henry could feel a deep connection to it. This was a being that belonged to the meadow, a guardian of its secrets, and it seemed to recognize Henry as someone who respected its home. Henry stayed very still, careful not to startle the creature. It drank from the pond, its reflection blending with the shifting colors in the water. Henry felt awe and humility. He understood that the meadow had revealed itself to him because he had approached it with respect, patience, and care. It had tested him, observed him, and allowed him to witness a world few humans had ever seen. He knew that any sudden move or careless action could undo the trust he had earned.
As he watched, Henry began to think about the larger meaning of his experiences.
The meadow was more than a hidden place. It was a lesson. It had taught him about balance, responsibility, and the consequences of curiosity. Bank. He realized that the thrill of discovery came with the need for caution, and that true understanding required observation, not interference.
He felt grateful for the opportunity to witness something so extraordinary, and he knew he had a duty to protect it.
Henry spent hours in the meadow that morning, observing the creature, the pond, and the patterns in the grass. He took careful notes, made sketches, and recorded his thoughts. Each detail mattered. He noticed subtle changes in the colors of the flowers, the movement of insects, and the way shadows shifted across the land. The meadow seemed to respond to his presence, revealing small secrets while maintaining its overall mystery. He understood that this delicate balance was a reflection of life itself, a combination of beauty, fragility, and unseen connections. As the sun climbed higher, Henry decided it was time to explore a part of the meadow he had not yet entered. He followed a narrow path between two groves of trees, noticing that the air became cooler and the sounds of the meadow quieter. Here, the plants grew taller, and the light filtered through in thin golden streams. He saw patterns in the soil that looked almost like symbols created either by nature or some unknown force. The deeper he went, the more he felt that he was entering a sacred space, one that demanded reverence and careful attention.
In this part of the meadow, Henry discovered evidence of past visitors, though not human.
Tiny marks on rocks and small disturbances in the moss suggested that creatures, perhaps the same one he had seen before, moved through this area regularly. Barron realized that the meadow was not static. It was alive, constantly changing, and sustained by a delicate rhythm that he was only beginning to understand. He recorded these observations with care, knowing that preserving this knowledge was part of his responsibility. Suddenly, a movement in the trees caught his attention. This time it was larger than the small creature he had seen before. A family of deer emerged, cautiously stepping into the clearing. They seemed unafraid, moving with grace and awareness. Bah! Henry watched them silently, feeling privileged to witness such natural beauty. The deer approached the pond drinking and grazing, while the small creature observed from a distance. Henry realized that the meadow was a sanctuary, a hidden world where creatures lived undisturbed and connected to something larger than himself. Henry knew he could not stay indefinitely. He had responsibilities, and he understood that his continued presence required restraint. As he began to make his way back toward the edge of the meadow, he noticed something unexpected. A faint path that led deeper into the trees, one he had not seen before. The path seemed natural, yet purposeful, as if it had been created by the creatures themselves. Henry felt a surge of curiosity, but he reminded himself of the lessons he had learned: patience, observation, and respect. He decided to mark the path for future exploration, but not to enter it just yet. Some mysteries needed time, and some boundaries should not be crossed too quickly.
By late afternoon, Henry returned to the edge of the meadow. Dusty grazed quietly, waiting patiently.
Henry mounted the horse and took one last look at the land he had explored. The meadow glowed softly in the light of the setting sun, colors shifting gently across the grass and trees. Bare. Henry felt a deep sense of satisfaction and humility. Patience, careful observation, respect for boundaries, and understanding consequences were qualities he could bring to his work, his relationships, and his personal growth. The meadow had become a teacher, guiding him not only through its mysteries, but through his own understanding of the world. One late afternoon, as Henry stood at the edge of the meadow watching the sunlight filter through the trees, he felt a sense of completion, despair. He had ventured into the unknown, witnessed extraordinary beauty, and learned lessons he would carry for the rest of his life. The forbidden meadow remained a secret, a place of wonder and mystery, but it had also revealed something essential: that curiosity must be balanced with care, and that true discovery comes with responsibility. Pan that day, and rode back toward the farmhouse, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew the meadow would always be there, waiting quietly, its secrets preserved and protected. He had done something extraordinary, yet he had done it with respect. The forbidden meadow had changed him, teaching him about the beauty, fragility, and mystery of life. And in that quiet realization, Henry found not just satisfaction, but a profound sense of connection to the land, to the creatures, and to the world beyond what could be seen or touched. The sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the ranch. Henry stood for a moment, looking back at the meadow, its soft glow fading into the evening light. He whispered to himself, almost as if sharing a secret with the land, "Thank you." And with that, he turned and walked back to the farmhouse, ready to continue his life with a new understanding, a greater respect for the unknown, and the quiet knowledge that some boundaries, while tempting, are meant to guide us rather than confine us.